War has always produced stories of extraordinary individuals, but few are as chilling and fascinating as that of the deadliest sniper in World War history. A man whose precision, patience, and ability to remain unseen turned him into a legend on the battlefield. A figure both feared and respected, known to the world as Simo He. Fighting during the brutal conflict between Finland and Soviet Union in what is remembered as the Winter War, he became a symbol of how one individual could have a massive impact even in the middle of a large-scale war, where millions of soldiers were involved. Before the war, he lived a simple life as a farmer and hunter, spending most of his time in the forests, developing skills that would later define his role in combat. He was quiet, disciplined, and deeply familiar with the harsh winter conditions of his homeland, something that would give him a critical advantage once the war began. When the Soviet Union invaded Finland in 19... Expecting a quick victory, they were met with fierce resistance from Finnish forces who knew the terrain and were prepared to defend their land at any cost. Among them was he, a soldier who would soon gain a reputation unlike any other. The conditions of the Winter War were some of the harshest ever faced by soldiers, with temperatures dropping far below freezing, sometimes reaching levels that made even basic survival a challenge. Snow covered the landscape. Visibility was limited, and movement was slow and dangerous. But for he, these conditions became an advantage rather than a limitation. Dressed in white camouflage that blended perfectly with the snow, he moved silently through the forests, using his knowledge of the terrain to position himself in places where he could observe enemy movements without being seen. What made him truly remarkable was not just his skill with a rifle, but the way he approached his role as a sniper. Unlike many others, he preferred to use iron sights instead of a scope, reducing the chance of light reflecting and revealing his position. He also packed snow in front of his firing position to prevent it from being disturbed by the blast of his rifle, ensuring that his location remained hidden. Every detail mattered, and every movement was calculated. He understood that survival depended on remaining invisible. As Soviet troops advanced into Finnish territory, they found themselves facing an enemy they could not easily locate. Soldiers began to fall one by one, often without warning, creating fear and confusion among the ranks. The sniper responsible for many of these losses became known as the White Death, a name that reflected both his appearance and the fear he inspired. Reports spread quickly, turning him into a legend even among his enemies, who began to see him as something more than just a soldier. Despite repeated efforts to eliminate him, including sending counter-snipers and launching artillery strikes at suspected positions, he continued to operate with incredible effectiveness. Day after day, he carried out his mission, taking advantage of every opportunity, every mistake made by the enemy. His ability to remain undetected for long periods made him nearly impossible to stop, and his confirmed number of kills grew rapidly, reaching figures that were almost unbelievable given the short duration of the conflict. But behind the legend was a human being facing constant danger. Every time he took a position, he risked being discovered. Every shot could reveal his location. The pressure was immense. Yet he maintained his focus, relying on discipline and experience to guide him. For him, it was not about fame or recognition. It was about defending his country and doing what was necessary to survive. His story took a dramatic turn near the end of the war, when he was struck by an enemy bullet that caused severe injuries to his face. The impact was devastating, and for a time, it seemed like even he would not survive. He was evacuated from the battlefield and received medical treatment, but his condition remained critical. Remarkably, he regained consciousness on the very day the war ended, a moment that felt almost symbolic, as if his survival was tied to the end of the conflict itself. After the war, he lived a quiet life, far removed from the chaos that had defined his earlier years. He did not seek attention or attempt to build on his reputation. Instead, he returned to a more peaceful existence, carrying with him the experiences of a time that few could truly understand. The legend of the White Death continued to grow, becoming one of the most well-known stories of snipers in military history. What makes his story so compelling is not just the number of enemies he eliminated, but the way he did it, using skill, patience, and an understanding of his environment to overcome overwhelming odds. In a war where one side had significantly more resources and manpower, he proved that strategy and precision could make a difference. His actions had a psychological impact as well, creating fear and uncertainty that went far beyond the battlefield. In the end, the story of the deadliest sniper in World War history is about more than just numbers or records. It is about the reality of war, where individuals are pushed to their limits and forced to adapt in order to survive. It is about how one person, operating in silence and remaining unseen, can influence events on a much larger scale. And it is a reminder that behind every legend is a human being, shaped by circumstances and defined by the choices they make in the most extreme situations imaginable.